What is up, everybody? We are back with a Hanzo guide for Season 5, and today I'll be touching up on important topics that will make you a better Hanzo. I'll also be talking about the Season 5 meta and how it's affected Hanzo and where he stands. So, to get started, we're going to be talking about awareness and presence. So, a big part of playing a sniper is knowing where the enemy team is positioned so you can position yourself to make picks on unaware targets. Knowing where people are makes it so that you're playing safe and minimize your risk of dying, as well as looking for opportune moments to make picks of unaware enemies. This is especially true when it comes to playing against another Hanzo or Widow. The sniper that knows the location of the other sniper first will most likely win the snipe fight because awareness plays such a big role. It dictates how close you can play, how aggressive you can play, and allows you to learn your limits. And this comes with practice. So I'd suggest trying to keep track of as many enemies as you can and prioritize certain targets. An example would be, just because there's a Reinhardt in front of you doesn't mean you have to break his shield or kill him, but there are moments where that would work. Other times, you should look to flank Reinhardt's backline using Hanzo's wall climb ability and sonic arrow to keep track of as many enemies as you can, while giving your team vision on the enemies as well. Then, you should prioritize which targets are easiest to kill while staying alive. You don't even need to go for the kill every time. I mean, of course getting the kill helps, but sometimes you just can't do it, and all you have to do is put pressure on their backline from the backline. That way their front line will crumble slowly, giving your team way to break through the Reinhardt shield. One thing to keep in mind is that when you're flanking, the enemy team is going to look to respond to your threat and presence, and that's when you tell your team to move in. Communication with your team about what you're doing is extremely important, otherwise the disruption you cause will be all for nothing, especially if you die. Next up, we have jump shots. So jump shots were added to Hanzo's kit after his buff, which allowed him to retain his charged arrows as he wall climbs. Now this opens up a whole nother avenue when it comes to making picks. It adds an element of surprise. Enemies aren't able to see Hanzo while he's climbing up the wall if he's directly below them, giving Hanzo an opportunity to either one-shot scatter or go for a headshot on an unsuspecting enemy. There are many maps which allow you to do this, such as Dorado, Gibraltar, and as you get in the habit of utilizing his jump shots, which you should, you begin to see more opportunities to utilize these jump shots. Sometimes standing still and taking shots makes Hanzo an easy target, especially on maps like Hanamura. So jump shots can be extremely useful in situations such as attacking point A on Hanamura. The little window to the left can be used to shoot arrows in while reducing your risk of dying greatly. But at the same time, it can be a waste of time because of the luck factor involved. So for those of you who don't know what a jump shot looks like, here's an example of one on Dorado and another one on Gibraltar, just to give you a couple of locations that you could use it on. Moving on to spamzo versus flanking. There's a time to flank and there's a time to spam, and this all depends on where you are on the map, which heroes you're up against, and how many enemy heroes have been killed. For example, if your team gets a pick, you should go for a flank because that's one less person you have to worry about getting in your way, and that allows you to put more pressure on the enemy team with a man down. So whenever your team gets a pick, that should be your cue to go in and flank, especially if it's a Genji or Winston. However, if they have heroes that counter Hanzo, such as Genji, Tracer, and Winston, you should probably just stick with your team since it's a safer bet that you won't die. Now when it comes to spamming, there are certain maps which are great for this. Point A of Hanamura, both attacking and defending, King of the Hill maps such as Nepal, and these are just a few examples. The criteria to follow this is simple. If it's narrow and the enemy team is trying to pass through the spam, just keep spamming the choke. Here's another example of a spamzo location. King's Row in the hotel room to the left. Usually you have a DPS or healer moving in and out due to pressure from your team, and that allows you to easily get a pick, even if it's luck, on one of the DPS or healers. The important thing to remember when spamming is not to spend too much time doing this. I usually put out a sonic arrow to get a better chance at succeeding with the spamzo, and if that doesn't work by the second one, I usually just move forward to set up a scatter or actually track or flick. Each strat has a time and place. You just have to figure out which one to use and when, and this usually comes with practice and awareness. So just a quick overview of when to use what. When there's a choke and a tight space, use that spamzo, and if they have an enemy down, that should be the cue for you to go ahead and flank. So finally, let's talk about Hanzo in the current dive meta. Hanzo's having a hard time in the current meta because of Diva, Winston, Genji, and Tracer being all over the place. All of these heroes give Hanzo a hard time. Against this comp, it's best not to pick Hanzo at all if you don't know how to deal with them. Tracer is a small and fast moving target that is really hard to hit unless you have your scatter arrow up, and even then she can easily blink out of the way in time. Winston and D.Va are extremely annoying for Hanzo to deal with due to their mobility as well as the protection they provide for the team. D.Va's defense matrix not only protects her teams from your arrows, but also stops Sonic Arrow from doing its job completely, unlike barriers, since you can stick Sonic Arrow on barriers and still give your team vision. Genji gives you the same problem as Tracer does, hard to hit, and his deflect gives him enough room to make mistakes and end up killing you with your own arrow. So overall, the dive meta gives Hanzo an extremely hard time to perform, especially when flanking. So I recommend that you stick with your team as much as possible, and let's just hope that the next meta that comes along isn't as annoying as this one. And that is it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and I'll be back with another video next week.